welcome back to another week of In the Clutch podcast. I'm Gavin Russell, alongside me, Jonathan Michael. And Jonathan, back for another week. You weren't on with us last week. We had John Camosa, but back for another week. High school football is getting really exciting, and there's plenty to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're really getting close to the playoffs now. I mean, seems obvious, but it's always some of the most fun times of the year with playoffs coming up. You got some teams that have already clinched, some teams that are sitting at 5 wins, feeling pretty good, but still need that one more win to officially clinch. A couple of division races still up in the air in both the Mid-Illini and the Big 12. And, a couple of teams that are really going to have to, win their last two or win one of their next 2 games to clinch that spot. So we're looking forward to the playoffs and how teams are going to be shaping up going in week 8 and 9.
For sure, it's been some exciting football, and it's hard to believe that the season's already gone by this fast. It feels like just yesterday me and you were out at Pekin week 1 when they were taking on Rock Island, so it's definitely flying by for sure, but lots of football left to be played. There's definitely some teams that have high hopes to make deep runs into the state playoffs, which I think is entirely possible. But focusing on the last couple of weeks of the regular season, there's a lot of things left to be decided. Conference races, teams getting playoff berths and such. But let's take a look at our CSM games of the week from last week. We had a couple of big matchups. If we start the game you were at, John, it was the radio game on 101.1 ESPN Peoria. That was a small school matchup, big rivalry between two teams that had the same record. That was Elmwood Brimfield at Farmington. The Farmers took care of business, but plenty of action in that game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, game kind of got off to a slow start as a defensive battle. For the first quarter, it was tied at 0 after the first 12 minutes of play, but Farmington just exploded out of the gates in the second quarter. Gage Rankin looked really good at quarterback. They kind of chipped away at you for a couple of running plays, and then they would throw it over the top, which Farmington can do pretty well. And they're kind of catch Elmwood Brimfield off guard, and they'd either have a big play that would either set up a touchdown or they would score on that big play. That was really just kind of the main differentiator in that game. And Elmwood Brimfield, obviously, they put up a good fight, but they're a run heavy team, and Farmington was ready for it. Elmwood Brimfield still showed some fight late in that game. They passed the ball very efficiently. So even though that we saw a lot of Aiden Frail and Gavin Boole and Bo Windish, Sloan Windish, all carrying the football for Elmwood Brimfield, they're still able to throw the ball a little bit towards the end and kind of getting a rhythm going into their game week 8. But Farmington, a team that we wouldn't really expect to have 2 losses in the regular season. Obviously, they both came against 2 other very good teams in Mercer County and Macomb, but Farmington is looking really good. Obviously, they have a huge tradition of success there, and I think they kind of dispelled any rumors of them maybe not, maybe being at full strength right now, but because they looked really good against Elmwood Brimfield, who is also a powerhouse in the Prairie Land Conference.
For sure, and they matched up. Both of those teams had a common loss against Macomb, who's been unreal this season, and then they're going to probably most definitely win that conference. Again, a little unusual to see Farmington like that, especially with some of the recent seasons that they've had. But Farmington is a very, very good football team, and they're a team that has a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge and a lot of history in the state playoffs. So you can almost throw them, a couple losses out the window. They're a team that definitely could make it well into the state playoffs to the semifinals. You never even know. Maybe they'll make it to the state championship. But definitely some good things there. Our other game of the week, I was at that one with John Camosa on our video broadcast. That was Dunlap at Washington. And that was a game, John, that, I think that it was pretty close early on, but Dunlap never got the offense going. And, Washington obviously kind of took care of business. Their defense looked really good. Our player of the week on CSM player of the week was Jace Harlan. He had some ridiculous stats. I believe he had 9 solo tackles, some tackles for loss, a sack in there. Carter Perina was all over the place. The secondary played really well as well. Kanan McQuarrie was making plays. Offensively, we saw some good stuff from the Panthers. Dunlap just couldn't quite figure it out, and a lot of penalties. Was yet another theme in that game. So overall, it was a really solid football game, a lot of really good action. Washington ultimately coming out on top. But I just got to – I know you weren't there, John, but some thoughts on that Dunlap-Washington matchup.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a huge win for Washington. Obviously, they're now at 4 wins on the year, which makes things a little bit easier, obviously, to clinch playoff eligibility with their fifth win. Washington travels to Canton this week, where I definitely think they are favored in that game. So I would expect them to take care of business, and lock up their fifth win of the year. But that was a big game because any game for the teams like Washington, Metamora, Dunlap, Morton, where they can beat another one of those four teams I just mentioned, is going to go a long way in deciding the Mid-Illini. Obviously, Pekin is running away with top spot, and it certainly looks like they're going to be the cream of the crop in the Mid-Illini this year. But but those wins are always huge for teams like Washington, who obviously are looking to get to 5 wins and also kind of advance their rank in the Mid-Illini standings. And obviously Dunlap's a very good football team too. They came into the game at second place in the Mid-Illini. And Madden Burke and Graham Glover were coming off a huge performance the week prior. So again, Dunlap's defense is usually pretty good week in and week out. Their offense can usually either be really good or it can also just be stopped as it was in Washington. So again, it's just about fighting that consistency. But definitely have to credit Washington's defensive unit with Harlan and Kenan McQuarrie and Carter Prina, who's again he's just a sophomore, so he's going to be making plays for the Panthers for a long time. So again, I mean Washington, really a team that I think is a lot of people are still underrating a bit because they started the season 1-3, but they're back now. They've won 3 in a row, so I would not be wanting to play the Panthers right now. They're making their good case for the second place team in the Mid-Illini.
They're getting hot at the right time, and a lot of juniors and sophomores on this team. They're not, heavily senior led compared to the last couple of years. Last year they had so many great seniors, and then of course losing them to graduation as all teams do, lose some great seniors. But they're really starting to replenish, and we're seeing that with all of these key sophomores and juniors. So the Panthers only getting better from here on out. Dunlap, as you mentioned again, they're a really good football team. Just got to kind of find their stride a little bit, and they do have a big game against Morton this week, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Let's go to one of our segments here, 3 words or less. John, what do you got for 3 words or less this week?
So my 3 words, in honor of the recent events that have taken place in college football in the state of Illinois, my 3 words are the fightin' Mid-Illini. And obviously, shout out to Illinois, moving to 5-1 on the year with their big win over Iowa. It ranked in the AP Top 25. So, Gavin, me and you were both at that game. So, obviously, shout out to Illinois. Fun team to watch this year. But I want to get back into the high school ranks here. And, the fight Mid-Illini, I just was talking about how all those 4 teams, Dunlap, Metamora, Morton, Washington, all jockeying for position here down the stretch. And none of them are separated by more than a game. And none of them have also clinched playoff eligibility either. So all those teams, if they want to qualify for the playoffs, they're going to have to win at least one of their next 2 games, which for some teams may be easy. For some teams, again, they have a tough schedule. Like for example, Dunlap, they play Morton this week and then Metamora the next week, and those 2 games are no guarantees by any means. So that Metamora Dunlap game, week 9, is going to be a barn burner, and then Morton, Washington, they play each other in week 9 as well. So those games I'm really looking forward to. You can probably expect that, we'll hopefully be out there for one of, if not both of those games. And, it's just kind of what you would expect from the Mid-Illini. I mean, obviously when it comes to playoff time, all those 4 teams may not be seeded the highest because, there's a chance that they could be all 5-4. There could be a 6-3 team in there, definitely. But again, I mean, those are all 4 teams that, I don't think that their final regular season record will be accurate of an accurate indicator of how good those teams are, because all 4 of those teams can, make a good run in the state playoffs. So definitely looking forward to seeing how that all kind of shakes out, especially with a lot of head-to-head matchups between that group of 4 in the Mid-Illini the last 2 weeks.
Most definitely. That's going to be a really interesting matchup to watch. And again, as you mentioned, that's not an accurate indication just because how tough the Mid-Illini is. A team that could make it in the playoffs at 5-4 doesn't necessarily mean that they're as good as a 5-4 team. They're a team that, okay, if they play a little bit easier competition throughout the year, maybe they're 6-3, 7-2, something of that nature. Definitely with some big potential to be a heavy underdog, but a team that can make some noise in the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see who can make it to the playoffs and who can be playing some playoff football. We will see in the last couple weeks. My 3 words are pride of city. I guess you'd say pride of the city. But Peoria High Lions definitely putting on another big display. They played Bloomington last week, and another big win for the Lions. And I got to say, I'm a little biased just because I've seen some great Peoria High teams over the year, but they look really, really good. And I know we kind of keep talking about how good they are, but they definitely have the makings, and I think a lot of people would agree that they definitely have the potential to be a team that could make it to the state semifinal, state championship. Of course, Central Illinois is a great high school sports community, and if they're one of the teams in that position to be in the state semifinal or state championship, there's going to be people from all over, all sorts of schools that are going to be supporting them. Big 12, Mid-Illini, it doesn't matter. So definitely the Lions have some big potential to make some noise in the playoffs. They do have a couple of tough games coming down the stretch, Normal West and Peoria Notre Dame. Those are both going to be big matchups for them. Of course, a big city matchup and, of course, a big conference matchup with the Normal West Wildcats. So keep an eye on the Lions. They've got some big players. We talked to Landon Newby-Holsom last week, so go back and check that one out. They're just grinding. They're getting better, getting their young guys into shape, getting that line going. They're definitely got a lot of things going right for the Peoria High Lions.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, I just kind of wanted to quickly mention, I still don't know how Peoria High is not ranked in the top 3 in Class 5A. I mean, obviously, yes, there's some good teams in that class. Obviously, like including Morgan Park, who beat Peoria in the first round of the playoffs last year. We were there broadcasting that game. But I mean, Peoria High has just looked so dominant the entire year, and I'm sure Tim Thornton's got to feel really good about their performance against Bloomington, not because they won by so much, but because they pitched a shutout, their first of the year, and defense is something that he was really emphasizing this year. And obviously, Peoria High, kept pretty much all their opponents below, I think 20-ish or so points. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. I'll have to double check that. But again, they didn't really let any teams score a bunch of points, but this was their first shutout of the season. It's got to feel good, and obviously this is when you want to build momentum, especially on the defensive end going into the playoffs.
No doubt about it, John. They have been very good, and defense is something that we've talked about a lot too. Is they're not a defensive team typically, not because they can't play defense, just because they play a little more unorthodox, you could say, compared to a normal team. They're very aggressive, always looking to make the big play, but they're so fundamentally sound this year. They've got a lot of great big players on that defensive side of the ball. Going back to preseason, Tim Thornton was saying, he was really confident in that defense, and it's really proving true. You can see in a lot of their weeks, including their most recent game, a shutout over the Bloomington Purple Raiders. Let's go now, though, to our upcoming games of the week. We got some big matchups for Week 8. How about on the radio side of things? This is going to be, again, on 101.1 ESPN Peoria, and 2 teams jockeying for a playoff spot. Both teams need 1 win in the last 2 weeks to qualify for the state playoffs, but definitely would like to win out this season. It's going to be Dunlap at Morton. Eagles travel to face the Potters. This is going to be an exciting matchup, definitely with a lot on the line.
Yeah, definitely. And, for Dunlap, I think the key for them is, obviously Morton is really going to attack the ground game with Carl Whitaker and Brett Michael, who we haven't really talked about the last week or two, but again, they've been 2 real big difference makers for the Potters this year. And, I think for Dunlap, they're going to have to just kind of make sure that their front 7 is all geared up and ready to go, because Kidon McQuarrie from Washington, I mean, how about the year he's having? It really was kind of, I wouldn't say an unknown, but it wasn't really on a lot of people's radars going into this year, just because he was unproven at the varsity level. And he ran for 172 yards and a touchdown against Dunlap. So great performance by him. But I think Dunlap is going to have to, make sure that Carl Whitaker and or Brett Michael don't put up those kind of numbers in Week 8 against them. And obviously, they're going to want to get the passing game going as well. I know Morton has a real strong secondary that had a lot of, returners. One thing I remember when I was talking with Tim Brilley before the season, He said that the secondary is going to be very strong. They have a couple, good key pieces on their defensive line as well. So again, obviously Braden Orr will probably get a lot of carries for Dunlap, and what I would expect to be a run-heavy game. But I think it could kind of be like that Farmington Elmwood Brimfield game where, I think we'll see a lot of runs, but both teams definitely are candidates to, break open the game with a big pass, and kind of catch them off guard. Really looking for a big bounce back game from Graham Glover, who Washington spent a lot of time keying in on last week. And then for Morton, I think they really gotta find a way to win either, this week against Dunlap or week 9 against Washington. So they're gonna obviously they're sitting at 4-3 for the year after picking up their 4-foot win against East Peoria. So the Potters will be well rested going into this game. So certainly that gives kind of them it gives them a little bit of an advantage. So looking forward to see how the Potters kind of react to that, because sometimes a bye week can really help your team. Can get some some rest and and kind of look forward to your next opponent, but it can also kind of hurt you if you're kind of trying to get in a rhythm, trying to establish some momentum, because that's a week where you're not seeing game action at all. And there's sometimes where we see in the high school level where we've seen teams have a bye week and then they come out flat the next week. We saw it with Peoria Notre Dame, I think, from week 2 to week 3. Because week 2 they're supposed to play Urbana. Obviously, Urbana does not have a varsity team this year, so they took the week off, and then the next week the Irish fell flat. So the Potters have got to make sure that does not happen to them in week 9, because you don't want week 9 to be a must-win scenario if you want to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, there's some big things riding on this game and a lot of variables that maybe you wouldn't have originally considered, but a lot of things for both teams to work on. It should be a really exciting matchup. Not exactly sure who will be out calling that game yet, but either way, it's going to be an exciting matchup. You're not going to miss that game. It's going to be on 101.1 ESPN Peoria. Potters and Eagles going at it. Make sure to tune in for that one on Friday. Our other CSM game of the week on video, we're heading down to Bloomington Normal. Normal West will be the site of our game of the week for our video stream. The Peoria High Lions and the Normal West Wildcats. I think that, says enough right there, John. That's a big matchup. If you want to go deeper into it, you can say conference championship potentially here on the line. Of course, big bragging rights on the line. These two teams have met in some huge matchups in recent years. I mean, just on the surface, John, this is going to be an exciting game. Take us a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah, we've had our eye on this game for quite some time, especially after the hot start that Normal West had. And I remember our co-founder, Larry Larson, said that Peoria High Normal West game could be for the conference championship. And it definitely could be, although Centennial's still in the mix as well at 7-0. And Centennial plays Normal West in week 9. But that's not to take away from what this game will be, because if Normal West wins this game, and that would put them and Peoria High both at 7-1 overall. And obviously, it would be a huge win for the Wildcats, because nobody has figured out how to beat Peoria High this year. Although it's going to be the unstoppable force meets the immovable object, because Peoria High's offense, we know, firing on all cylinders. Just a well-oiled machine. Nobody's been able to stop them. They've scored over 54 points the last, 4 weeks, I want to say. And Normal West, their defense is among one of the best in the area. And that was really a key point of emphasis for them going into the season. And it's really paid off, because Normal West has had really good defensive showings in all but maybe one of their games. That was against state-ranked Richmond Burton, who is one of the top teams down in Class 4A. So, and again, the Wildcats pitched a shutout last week in their 17-0 win over Quincy Notre Dame. So it's going to be a really, really exciting game because of, I would say the Big 12's best defense versus the Big 12's best offense. And we're not even talking the Big 12. We're talking some of the best units in the state, I would say, going up against each other. It is going to be a really fun game to watch. I don't even know how to, really predict this one, because, because we've never seen Peoria High's offense being stopped. We've never seen Normal West's defense really being overtaken. So it's really hard to say where this game is going to go. Obviously, Wildcats have a little bit of an edge playing at home. But, man, that's going to be a great, great game. That's going to have a lot of people talking, and it's going to have a big implications in the Big 12 Conference.
No doubt about it. There is going to be some action in this game both ways. And, kind of talking about that explosive Peoria High offense for a moment, just seeing some of the stats on Twitter for some of the Peoria High receivers. And, and especially in high school, we do see a lot of great, pass catchers and quarterbacks, but still, a lot of running is what a lot of teams do. We don't see too much of the air attack, at least at the high school level, but it's starting to increase. But this Peoria High team has figured out the air attack really well. Look at Ricky Hearn for the season, 25 catches, 527 yards on the year, 5 touchdowns. According to the stats that they posted here, 279 yards after catch, 137 yards after contact. Ricky Hearn is a really, really good receiver, not to mention he's got TQ Webb, a sophomore, next to him who's got 547 yards for the season on similar numbers, 9 touchdowns for TQ Webb. I mean, they have some big numbers coming up. Of course, Malachi Washington gets it done in the backfield. Tino Gist is an excellent quarterback, continuing to emerge. And one of the most surprising things out of all is we know Peoria High always fields a good offensive line, but before this season, Landon Newby-Holson was telling me that they really hadn't had a lot of guys that had played varsity snaps, or not many of them. A lot of freshmen, sophomores. They do have a few experienced players, but not a lot of overall experience, not a ton of depth coming back. They've played really well, so this team is just firing on all cylinders. Definitely why a lot of people are talking about them maybe being in the conversation for a state championship. Obviously, they're state ranked for good reason. But we'll figure out on Friday night if Normal West, again, who has a very, very good defense. They face some tough matchups already. I would definitely say they're battle tested and definitely have an edge playing on the home field. Definitely want to play for the home fans on Friday night. So a good matchup there. You're not going to want to miss it. We also have an interview this week with head coach of Morton, Tim Brilley. Jonathan Michael was able to talk with him for a few minutes. Enjoy that interview now.
Obviously, kind of just got to figure that you'd be a good guy to talk to and everything like that. So, first of all, I just kind of want to ask just how the season has been going for you guys overall.
Yeah, for the most part, it's been a work in progress. We started a little bit slow with a tough game against Muhammad, had a couple bounce-back wins, and then got a conference play, and Metamora got us early, and then played really tough against Beacon, but came up short. And then, since then we beat Limestone, then we had a forfeit with East Peoria. So it's just been, we much rather would have played that game, even though, we probably would have been picked to win. But it's just been kind of a roller coaster ride. Our kids have come a long way. I think we've gotten better each week, and I think, these last 2 weeks we've been practicing really well, and I think we're finally getting the whole big picture put together, and, I like where we're at right now.
Sure, definitely, and, kind of, going back to that bye week that you guys had with the East Peoria forfeit, I just kind of want to know, how you guys handled that, because I know you obviously want to, be out in the field each week and everything like that, but sometimes, a bye week's going to come back to hurt you, so I just kind of wanted to know how you guys handled that, with rest and everything, or practicing and game planning for this game on Friday.
Yeah, well, we got the whole week of preparation in for East Peoria, so we didn't really change our week. We found out about 4:45. We practice in the morning on Thursdays, since it's a shorter practice, and so we had gotten all 3 practices in preparation and our walkthroughs and all that stuff, and the time and yada yada yada. But we found out Thursday night or Thursday evening that the game wasn't going to happen, and so we immediately shift our focus to Dunlap. We knew Dunlap and Washington were playing in Washington the next night, and so in the middle lineup we trade film on Wednesdays of our 2 previous games before the game you're playing that Friday. So we actually get film 10 days before. So we did have some game films of Dunlap from this year. So we kind of got on it Thursday night and Friday morning, and had something generic to practice against at least. So we did practice Friday after school. We wanted to have a good physical practice, get after it, and since we weren't going to have a game, because really you do get better just by playing the game. It's hard to simulate the full intensity of a game in practice, and that's really where kids get a lot better and they fix those mistakes. But so we did have a good, solid practice Friday night, and then we all kind of broke off by around 5 o'clock, went our separate ways. Our freshmen still played, so we went over to the freshman game for a little bit.
Sure.
And then went and watched Dunlap. So we really just got about a one-day head start in preparation and seeing plays. And, we do have a couple guys that are not seriously banged up, but, I mean, the time off, the not playing in a game, I'm sure helped them, but at the same time, you want to stay in a good rhythm.
Sure, definitely. And then just kind of looking at the Mid-Illini as a whole this year. Obviously, it's peak at the top, kind of crazy in the middle and everything. Is it kind of shaking out how you would expected it to, or just kind of want to know?
Yeah, I mean, all these teams are always somewhere in the mix at the top. I'm sure we all wish we were 1 loss or 2 losses instead of 3 losses. But, we're all trying to avoid that 5-4, or worst case 4-5. I'm sure we all are trying to get in the postseason, and nobody wants to be 5-4 going to the postseason because you're going to play a 9-0 or a really good 8-1 most likely. It just depends on how it goes. But so we're really just trying to focus on one game at a time, trying to be the best we can, and we realize we got a tough road ahead of us. But we want to play our best football game and put that together because we haven't done that yet. And so that's kind of been our focus. But yeah, I feel like conference-wise, it's one of those things. I mean, I know Dunlap still's got to play Metamora, and we still got to play Washington. And, we played Pekin really, really tough, and probably closer than anybody else has played them. And they've pretty much gone through the gauntlet already. So
yep.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give them the credit, but at the same time, everybody there in the middle is kind of stuck, and we'll see what happens here the last 2 weeks.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, I mean, these last 2 weeks are insanely big with obviously a quartet of teams at 4 and 3, and a lot of them played each other and everything like that. But just kind of looking at just some guys in your team this year and the seasons they've been having. What can you say about what Carl Whitaker and Brett Michael and Jude Hart have been able to do on the ground for you guys this season?
Yeah, I mean, Carl's kind of been our big play guy, but Brett's had much experience coming in. Carl's done a good job carrying the load, but Brett's going to get more carries here down the stretch. He's gotten a lot better in practice, understanding schemes and understanding these blocks and all that type of stuff. Jude's just gotten better each week. We kind of knew, coming in again without much experience at the varsity level. We knew what he could do. He just had to get confident in himself. Again, losing that East Peoria game, I'm hoping that's not a setback because he was on the, he's trending in the right direction. And he's had good weeks of practice, and he seems to be, grasping what we are trying to do offensively as well. So, as 2 juniors, and Carl obviously stepped into the role as a senior, has done a great job. We're proud with we're happy with their progress, and we're really hoping to see us finally put it all together.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, for sure. And then again this week against Dunlap, obviously we've seen them a couple of times this year. They're a team that really can spread the ball around on offense and hit you in a lot of different spots, either running, passing. It doesn't matter. So just kind of want to know, just defensively, how are you looking to game plan for the Eagles?
Yeah, they're a good football team. Obviously, we have to have our respect. We've been playing very good on the defensive side, really since the Pekin game.
Yeah.
Giving up 14 points. We've scored on defense, I think, 4 times this year, 3 times maybe. But, we try to be multiple but simple so we can match their personnel and stuff like that. A lot of, Dunlap and Washington both like to, throw a lot of different personnel groups out on the field and stuff like that. So we try to match that if we can. But at the same time, just be simple with what we're doing. We have solid defensive line play, disciplined defensive line play. We have 2 really good linebackers, Noah Losi and Blake Shoemaker, who both started all last year.
Yep.
And then we've got 3 good safeties we like to mix in with Carl Whitaker, Connor Hines, and Brent England all played a lot for us last year as well. So, defense is kind of our crush right now, and offense, we're bringing it along, and it's gotten better each week.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think on paper it's going to be a super close, well-rounded matchup on Friday. So definitely looking forward to it. One last question before you go. Just kind of want to know what the mantra is of the team and what you've been telling the guys coming down the stretch. At 4-3, playoffs kind of looming. I just kind of want to know what the motto has been.
For us, it's really, we always talk about focusing on ourselves, but right now it's just we can't control the outside stuff, so let's just have fun and give it our best shot and see what happens. That was kind of how we switched our focus late last year as well. Let's focus on us playing our best football, and whatever happens. We're not going to be able to make any major changes that are going to, change the course of the season or anything like that. We just have to keep getting better, and we can't worry about outside pressure or anything like that, or we got to win this game or that game, or to get in the postseason. And we just focus on having fun and doing what we do really well. I think we're going to have a good chance to still reach the goals of making the postseason and hopefully get in, a 6-3. But whatever happens. It's going to be on us.
John, we're moving into the last couple minutes here of our podcast. Let's take a look at our last couple things we always like to do. 2-minute drill. We're going to go quick here. What is your game flying under the radar this week?
Yeah, so my game under the radar this week is Centennial and Collinsville. Obviously, two teams that really aren't native to, obviously, the Peoria area, but Centennial, a Big 12 team that, a lot of people should be, taking notice of if you haven't already. They're 7-0 on the year. They had a big win this past week over Peoria Notre Dame, and it was a game that maybe it was a little bit closer than some people would think, but Centennial is the real deal. They have a lot of good size on that team, and they're right there with Peoria and Normal West for the Big 12 crown, and they travel down to Collinsville, an independent team that doesn't play in the conference, but they're 6-1 on the year. So this may be one of Centennial's biggest tests of the year so far, and so I think that given the fact that it's not really being played, obviously in either Peoria or Bloomington Normal. And Centennial is not really a team that, we're too accustomed to at least seeing, at least on our broadcast. I think that's the reason why I could fly under the radar. But, 7-0, Centennial, 6-1, Collinsville. That's what I got my eyes on this week.
That's a really good game to watch out for, a big non-conference matchup. So keep an eye on Champaign Centennial and Collinsville. My game flying under the radar comes from the Big 12 Conference as well. This is a conference matchup, though. Normal Community at Peoria Notre Dame, and you would think, especially maybe early in the year, this would be a little bit of a tighter matchup. Notre Dame and Community haven't been maybe quite as good as people expected them to be, but both competitive teams. And we saw last week, the Irish put up a really good fight against Champaign Centennial. It was an 8-point loss. That was also on the home field. So Notre Dame having some home field advantage. This is a big game against Normal Community. Definitely want to kind of move a little bit forward. They take the next step. Get a big win this week. That would definitely do a lot for the Irish confidence. As for Normal Community, again, haven't maybe quite had the season that they were expecting to early in the year, but they can come and be spoilers on the road. I think this is a game that's actually going to be pretty evenly fought because we've seen, again, both these teams be up and down at times this year. Hasn't been perfect, hasn't been exactly what they were expecting. But I think when you get two teams like this together, they're really going to want to try to take that next step, really kind of want to outdo the other and come out with a big win, especially as we get late into the year. Definitely every win matters so much. So this is going to be a big game. P&D hosting Normal Community. That's going to be a big game Friday night as well. A lot of great games around the Big 12 Conference. So if you're just a general football fan, keep your eye on the Big 12 scoreboard because there should be a lot of interesting matchups to keep your eye on.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll just quickly defend Normal Community here. Obviously they are 4-3, but I was looking again at the Ironman schedule and how their season has gone so far this year. I just want to kind of mention that obviously, yeah, they're 4-3. It's not what we would expect to see out of Community after them going, having the season that they did last year. But all three of their losses have come against incredibly good football teams. They lost against O'Fallon, who again a lot of Peoria people might not know how good O'Fallon is. They're in the state ranking for either 7A or 8A. I forgot which class they're in off the top of my head, but they are state ranked. They lost to Peoria High, who is state ranked, and they lost to Normal West, who is very close to being state ranked. They're at least in also receiving votes, and if my memory serves me right. So obviously, 4-3 on the year, but all three losses have come against very good teams. I would not write off the Ironmen going into Week 8.
No doubt about it, and that's nothing to discredit the Ironmen. They've been a good football team, and you can look at their schedule and see how tough it's been. Of course, I'm sure if you asked them, they would have loved to have done more, picked up some big wins against their rivals and whatnot. But definitely, there's still plenty of time to make some noise and get into the playoffs and hit their stride at the right time. So Ironman, definitely one to keep your eye on. Our favorite part and our last part of the episode is our hot takes and bold predictions. I know we've stirred up the fans a few times with this one. I don't know if we'll do that this week or not, but how about let's look at last week first. I had my bold prediction was P&D would beat Centennial, and I got oh so close, John. I think it was a little bit of a far-fetched one because Centennial's been so good, but Irish almost did it, but yet I fall to 1-5. I have a very poor record when it comes to my bold predictions, so most of them not working out. John Camosa had predicted that Cannon McQueary and Graham Glover would combine for 4 touchdowns, and it's quite a bit more of a defensive matchup, so we did not see that happen. Graham Glover was pretty quiet in that game. Again, a lot of credit to the Washington defense. Even McQueary had some big plays, but wasn't finding the end zone with regularity because it was such a defensive battle. So neither of our bold predictions or hot takes came true last week, but we'll see if they can happen this week. John, what do you got for your bold prediction / hot take?
Yeah, I don't really know how bold of a prediction maybe this counts as because these are two really good football teams squaring off. But again, another matchup that we haven't talked about yet on this podcast that people should be aware of that's happening this week is Eureka travels down into TriValley in a huge Heart of Illinois Conference matchup. Obviously, Eureka suffered their first loss of the season. They looked pretty invincible through the first 6 weeks, but Brimfield Lexington, who was one of the top teams in the state among smaller schools, was their kryptonite as the Mustangs took that one 21-7. But Eureka, I think, still a very good football team. So is TriValley. Again, we saw them in Week 2 versus DMAC, and that's a powerhouse of a program they have down there in Downs. So I think, maybe with, Eureka coming off the loss to Brimfield Lexington and traveling to TriValley, I think a lot of people would think that TriValley would be maybe the favorite, maybe have a little bit more momentum. I still like Eureka, though, to pull out this win. I still think that they're almost really similar to Peoria High in the fact that they have a really great offense, lots of options, just like the Lions do, and also a lockdown defense as well. So I know it wasn't quite enough to get past Ridgeview Lexington last week, but I think it will be enough to get past TriValley, and Eureka will move to 7-1 on the year. So that is my bold prediction.
That's a good take, and that'll be an exciting game as well. I don't think it's even flying under the radar. That's one of the top matchups among small schools in Central Illinois and the whole state of Illinois. That's one that the small school community is going to be watching very, very closely. My prediction is going to be a little bit different. Instead of predicting a winner or a team to pull off an upset or something, I'm going to go back to that Morton Dunlap game. I'm going to say it's going to come down to the last drive because I can easily see this game being tied heading into the remaining few minutes. One team or another, whether it's Dunlap or Morton, coming down and scoring on the final drive of the game, as time expires or something like that. Or a team putting up a big stop late. Perhaps we get into an overtime scenario. Again, maybe seems a little far-fetched, but I think either way, however you want to shake it down, it's going to come down to the last drive of the game. It's going to be that close. I think with so much riding on this game, it's not going to be a matter of teams not executing. I think it's just both teams are going to kind of trade blows. And once we get into the remaining 3-4 minutes of this game, I think we're going to be pretty much deadlocked. It'd be surprising me if one of these teams runs away with it too far, more than a score or two. So I think this is going to be a very, very close game, just because with how much is on the line. If you put these teams together, maybe week 3, week 4, maybe get a little bit of a different outcome, maybe not quite as much at stake. But again, such a big week for both of these schools because they know they need at least one win to get into the playoffs, and they don't want to put all that pressure on themselves going into Week 9, which doesn't get any easier when both of these teams have tough matchups. Washington and Metamora, respectively, they definitely want to get the job done this week, take a little bit of pressure off. We'll see if they can rise to the occasion and clutch up on Friday night. But you'll have to find out. You'll have to tune in for our live coverage if you can't make it out to the game, so make sure and do that. John, it's great talking with you again. Great podcast. Any closing remarks?
Yeah, I just kind of want to go back to what you said about, Dunlap Morton coming down to the last drive. I definitely think that is a very feasible, very realistic prediction, and I like it a lot. However, last time we said that a Dunlap game would come down to the final drive. You know what happened? Dunlap blew out Limestone. So, hey, the Eagles, if you're watching this, you got your motivation again. So, again, obviously, I do think this game will be a lot closer than, obviously, for the Eagles than their game against Limestone. But again, Dunlap and Morton, it's the epitome of just hard-nosed football. Two teams fighting for a playoff spot. Both teams honestly do deserve it. So obviously, you would like to see both teams obviously eventually notch their fifth win of the season. But again, only one team will be able to do that this weekend. And the losing team, well, they're gonna have to clutch up into Week 9 if they want to get to the postseason. So it is probably one of the most exciting times of the year in high school football. I know it sounds cliched, but it really is. I'm really looking forward to it a lot. Great matchups in the Big 12. Great matchups in the Mid-Illini. I feel like a kid on Christmas morning. I love it.
It's going to be a good finish to the season. And Dunlap fans, please do not come at me with the torches and pitchforks on the social medias. No disrespect to the Dunlap Eagles whatsoever. I just think this is going to be an exciting game. It's going to be very, very close just because, again, with so much at stake, both of these teams so evenly matched. It's going to be really exciting. See who can pull it out and, again, clutch up. So that's going to do it for this week's podcast. We appreciate everybody joining us. We'll have more content coming in the last couple weeks as we head into playoffs. I know we've got maybe some big things in the work. We'll keep that under wraps for now, John, but maybe look out for some additional coverage in the last couple weeks as we head towards the playoffs. And, of course, our live broadcasts on the radio and our video streams every week. Make sure to tune in for those. But for now, for Jonathan and Michael, I'm Gavin Russell. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of In the Clutch Podcast.